reducing inequality in income as well as those based on age, sex, disability, race and ethnicity, origin and religion, economic or other status within a country. The goal also addresses inequalities amongst countries, including those related to representation, migration, and development assistance. Whereas around the globe, the disparities remains very alarming. This session will explore strategies, avenues for joint actions to bridge the gap of inequalities and contribute to the further work of the People's Assembly, bridging the gaps between the SDGs, the Agenda 2030, and our aspirations. By highlighting our common experiences, these sessions aim to promote inclusive policies and collective actions. And ultimately, the conversation is one step towards achieving the recommendation of the Summit of the Future. And I'll handle the session to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Please let's give a round of applause to our colleague who has been coordinating with us throughout. And thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate that you found time to be here. My name is Robert Akoto Amoafo. I'm the Advocacy Manager for Pan-Africa ILGA in South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa. And I'm here with amazing panelists who are going to give us some quick conversation. We're going to start the conversation. I'm happy to introduce them very shortly, and then we start. We have Peter Smith, who is the president of the session of the Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment from Europe Economic and Social Committee. Please let's give it up for Peter. Thank you. We also have Androgynos Alpha, who is the executive director from Nadaria organization, and also a representation of the LGBT stakeholder group. This is Androgynos from Nadaria. And then we have Selma. Selma is a dedicated advocate from Black and Quilombola communities in Brazil. They are also representing the committees on discriminated on work and decent stakeholder group. Where is? Okay. And she'll be speaking Portuguese, and we have an interpreter by her who will support us. Language justice, you know. With a bomb, yes. Yes. Then we also have Selma. No, where's the next person? Anita. We have Anita from here, who is the executive director of IT for Change, where she leads research and advocacy. Let's give that for Anita. And we have Munka, who is also part of the major group of children and young people. Let's give it up for them. So as you may be aware, one of the our theme is inequalities and leaving no one behind. And one of the major difficulties we've had is ensuring that minorities are included. Some of us work for groups. I work for the LGBT group, and always we come to this session talking about how LGBT people need to be included. And there are so many other communities that are left out, and that is why you see the various representation. And we are making sure there's intersectionality and representation of each group. So with that, not to say so much, I invite Peter to start with us. And Peter is going to tell us how we can fulfill the SDG promise of leaving no one behind. Let's give it up for Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. I sit here with two hats. The one hat is that what you see here, the black, that I'm the president of the so-called NAT section of the European Economic and Social Committee. And the other hat is, the colleague from Oxfam had the questions of different groups. One of the question was, is a trade unionist in the room? And he said, yes, one, that's me. I'm also with the head of a trade unionist, a German trade union which dealt with food. And what I've learned in my long career, 40 years always, you can't compete in a speech when food is in the room. So I know that this is much more important and much more essential for us rather than having I don't know, the 15th speech in a row here in the room. So that's why I have fully understanding for this. And you might think that this guy is coming from Europe and he wants to tell us something about leaving no one behind, because I'm the phenotype of the ones we discussed. At first, we heard in the previous panel, living like a German. I'm a German. Living like a German, we would need 3.5 planets on this earth. So that's one point. Secondly, I'm the phenotype on these guys who created the disaster in which we are. And you would think, what can this guy tell us? And the answer is nothing. But I invite you to go with me and walk with me to a couple of points which I want to raise, because it is not only when we talk about leaving no one behind that we go into the global south. If you think that this guy is coming from the nice Disneyland Europe, where we do not see that we have a lot of problems also in inequalities, then you have failed, because in Europe we have a lot of inequalities which are created by something which I did not hear with one single word today. We talked about inequalities. We talked about profit making. And I think we are lacking on a clear language. And this is what I also learned today, that we are aligned also with a clear language. What has created this problem in which we are in this planet? When we talk about climate change, when we talk about inequalities around the globe, then I did not hear that it is the buzzword, you know, we always hear then the buzzwords. It is the capitalism which is creating the problems on this world, on this planet. We should not be silent on this and say, yeah, we must have a different economic model. The economic model is creating this problem. Friends, we have to express it. It is the capitalism which is only built on profit making and the exploitation of people and the nature and the environment. And this has to be clarified. If we don't do that, we just scratch on our way. And I heard a couple of interventions here, and I must honestly say, it makes me angry. When we say we have to educate everyone on this planet. Unfortunately, the lady is now gone. And I'm not surprised that we do not proceed with this kind of politicians. She said that she was 10 years as a politician. We have to educate. Do we want really educate 8 billion people on the planet that they behave in the right way? Good luck. So if we want to have 100 years or 200 years to come to a change in the world, no, this won't work. The only what works is when we clarify that 100 companies in the world are responsible for 60% of greenhouse gas emissions. So we want to educate 8 billion people to convince them to have a different behavior. Colleagues, this is bullshit. So what we have to do is we have to stress the companies, we have to stress the society, and to clarify that the profit-making process is the big problem. I tell you, I come from the food sector. Do anyone knows how much profit the big global companies like Nestle, Unilever, Danone, and big one Mondelez are making? Do you have an idea? Have anyone an idea how much this is? I mean, in percent of the turnover, 20%. It's 20% of the turnover, roundabout, the 1 point more or 20% means if I'm as a traditionalist, ask in the last 30 years to have 3 or 4% more. We got always the same answer. Oh, we can't pay it because the market doesn't deliver that what people need for their life. But they grab the big amount of money in the food supply chain. And there is no one is scandalized that these investors are asking for 20%. coming to this point that we must have a clear language. We have to scandalize that these people are getting richer and richer and richer. It doesn't matter where we are coming from, whether we come from the global south or in the global north. So we do not get the fair share. And the question, it is not about the money. Also here, bullshit. It is about the money. How do we want to organize a public transport which is climate neutral? How do we want to organize a care service, a care system where everyone can afford it? Everyone get the same service in the care system. Here we need the money. And these people, they are grabbing the money. And that's why I have not that much time. I would like to go to much deeper. And I have to apologize to my colleagues who made the briefing notes for me. They're always quite disappointed because people does not stick to this on this. So let me clarify, colleagues. Now I go back to the, I'm finalizing, to my position as the president of the European, the NAT section in the European Economic and Social Committee. What we launched now, and we had already bilaterals. I would like to invite you colleagues, you get the contact, to get more in touch with us, because my colleagues in our committee, they live really sometimes in this Disneyland and have no clue that our situation is, of course, not that worse for people in the global south. And we must bring this reality also to our committee in order that they learn, if we want to have really a point, leaving no one behind, the first thing is to know in which situation people living in the global south. So in this way, let me finalize and conclude. I had this already yesterday in another meeting. First thing is, solidarity is key. If we do not go with solidarity among us, we will lose. And second is, I'm a big fan of a great musician. And I had the pleasure and the honor to join his last open air concert. It was in Germany. It was Bob Marley. And you know, get up, stand up. Help me. Get up, stand up, and fighting for the rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the energy. And because you're leaving in a few minutes, we just want, if anybody has a quick question, just two people for a clarity for whatever you said, then we can move on. Yes. We take one and then we take another. Colleagues, please, can you, we having some interruptions from the conversations behind, so we want to have some quiet here.
I'm Nandini from IT for Change India, and I understand that, you know, if there is a problem that is actually caused by the extractivism of global capitalism, we have to call it out for what it is, and only then can we look at solutions. And including in the food sector, we see all its manifestations and new kinds of collaborations between big tech and big agriculture firms and many things happening. But I wanted to ask you that these days, especially considering the capitalist is no longer easily identifiable, and oftentimes because of the way multi-stakeholderism has been because of the way in which multi-stakeholderism has been used within the multilateral system, we actually see that corporations sometimes sit in the room wearing the hat of civil society. Sometimes they are philanthrocapitalists, and then it gets very muddled. So how does one deal with it, and what are your thoughts on this?
If there's no other question, in the interest of time, okay, last one, and then we move on.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Beals, and I work with the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors. So I'd really appreciate Peter's comment on how the union fraternity, trade union fraternity, is working on the topic of, you know, the most left behind peoples. We work on the social protection floor, you see, and over 50% of the world does not have access to it. even though it's an ILO recommendation and it's included in SDG 1 as a core means to reduce poverty. So what's your view of the union, I don't know, fraternity really, response to this? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So the first question is, it's an ongoing fight. That's what we have to do, and we have, as I said it, we have to spell it out. No one is spelling it out at this building, and even here I said no one is saying that the current, we say, economic system. If you ask people at the street what does it mean, the current system, no one has really an idea what it means. So that the first, not for most of you would agree, but a step what we have to do is to bring this kind of data, which we get, for instance, for Oxfam. Oxfam is doing a fantastic job. So using this data, when they go for the World Economic Forum, they use always a very good moment to address this. So we must take this up and also start at the same days to clarify that this is not the global south or the poor people or the normal people are creating this problem. It is the super rich people. In Germany, 1% of the population have, in Germany, I mean, this is a country where you would not expect it, they have 66% of the wealth. So, and 50% have, they don't have anything. They have nothing. So who is saying this? Not even in my country. So if we use this data, which are at the table, we know that. Look at Oxfam. Oxfam is, again, doing a fantastic job. Then we have to go out with this kind of messages, not with our technological terminology. This is needed, of course, sometimes, but we also have to say, stop exploiting people. To the second question, it is about structure building. What we can use now in Europe is indeed that 65 years ago, smart people constructed this European Economic and Social Committee, which is the house of organized civil society. And here we have the opportunity to have an access to policymakers. And I agree that we are not the ones having the first access. No, in the European Commission, you have a transparency register. 75% of contacts are business contacts. The rest is shared by all others. No? So, but at least we have this kind of structure. That means think in your regions to build similar things. We made now a memorandum of understanding with the African Union in order to also learn, but also to see what we are doing. And is this a model what could be replicated? I don't say that we have the, you know, that we are the ones having the right structure. Sometimes I'm struggling with my constituencies as well. But at least using this opportunity, we don't have any other chance. The neoliberals, as we heard today from the lady who explained that, they made a clear plan. We don't make a plan. We come here with everyone is doing that what he wants to do. We have good movements like SDG Watch, like different organizations now coming together, and we have to be strategic. We heard that today, and that is helping us because, again, I said this also, we are on the right side. I always was clear in my life that I was always on the right side in my life. And in the historic situation, people will confirm that. But we have to do something out of this.
Thank you. Please, let's give it up for Peter. Please, let's give it up for Peter. And colleagues, please, when you're having a small conversation at the back, I'm speaking loud so that you hear me, those having conversations. When you're having a small conversation at the back, imagine we have a mic at your lips and we can all hear what you're saying. So whatever you're saying, we can hear you. So please give us the few minutes that we need to have this conversation in the bigger space. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to have the continuation of the conversation, and our colleagues are going to talk about the various groups that they work with. We're going to have Anita, who's going to talk about how does digital divide have a direct and negative impact on global development and the goal of creating inclusive global societies and economies, despite global recognition of the importance of digital inclusion to achieve sustainable development goals. Wow. You have 5 minutes to do this, my dear.
Well, following also from Peter's footsteps, I think it's not going to be easy. But I think, how many of you have heard this Mullah Nasruddin story that, Mullah was standing under the lamp looking for something. So someone passes by and says, "What are you looking for, Mullah?" And he says, "Look, I lost a ring, so I'm looking for it here." "Where did you lose it?" "I lost it somewhere else." So the story of inequality in the digital context, we've been told that, there is, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And I think we really, really need to unpack this and start looking at the right places to identify what we mean by equality and what we mean by justice. So it's not enough to stop at questions of inequality, but we need to also get into questions of digital justice, data justice, and evolve, I think, a particular vision of a feminist idea of digital justice. I want to start by saying that whether you look at the Global Digital Compact, which was adopted this morning, along with the Pact of the Future, the idea of connectivity is technicalized. It is seen to be a kind of an infrastructure, which it is, of course, which has to reach people. But what we need to understand is when we include people in the truest sense of the term, we are not just bridging the connectivity gap, as all the documents oftentimes echo and repeat. What we are doing is we're connecting people. And in spite of providing this infrastructure, we have to understand that providing coverage is not the same thing as ensuring meaningful usage. So that's really important, and meaningful usage always has to come from the spirit of self-determination, from the spirit of autonomy. The pandemic really proved to us that there's no two ways. We do need digital infrastructure, but we also realized to our horror that all our essential infrastructure is privatized. E-commerce platforms belong to, the top 8 billionaires, and therefore our appeal has to be that meaningful connectivity and belonging in the digital domain and participating in it must be agentic. It must not be adverse in corporations. For long, we have been convinced about one thing, or we've been told so by the Silicon Valley enthusiasts, and that is everything must operate on scale, right? Scale, size matters, that's what we are told, but we need to really contest this kind of Silicon Valley patriarchy. What is important to understand, and I'll skip the numbers in the interest of time, but just tell you the story is we find an economy where there's no fair play. Patents are heavily concentrated in just 2 countries and corporations of just 2 countries who control 90% of the market capitalization in terms of the platform economy. There is no room for small actors. There's no room for small private sector, for people who aspire to enter into e-commerce. They may be women homemakers trying to establish a cooperative. Let's also look at the ecological costs. Training AI models requires huge amounts of, and the water consumption of data centers is phenomenal. Carbon emissions account for around 3% of total global emissions from technologies. GPT-3 has now even surpassed the most recent LLMs. And therefore, what we're actually saying is that for one search, one inference that you're searching from ChatGPT, you will consume loads and loads of electricity, which is more than just what a household in the US uses per day. Forget a household elsewhere in the world. I mean, a US household is being seen as the norm here, which is itself is problematic. But what we're saying also is 3 very, very important tendencies which contribute to entrenching injustice in society. One, there is a growing incursion of platforms into public sector, which means social security. One of my friends and sisters just spoke about social security. Social security dispensation by governments is through partnerships with these private vendors who are all data companies. There's an encroachment into our societies in the form of control over the infrastructure of elections through platforms. And there's an erosion of social fabric. And we will hear from our sisters here today in terms of how intersectional politics stands really in the throes of co-optation by these big tech companies which claim that they are the voice of the LGBT movement. They are the voice of the queer movement because they believe that they can actually be inclusive in terms of providing services, to all these companies, whereas they only care about provocations, about amplification, about virality. They don't really care. I mean, that's the bottom line that Peter spoke about. So what I want to do in concluding, in just the minute I will take, is to show that in September, the International Labour Organization released a report that showed you that the global labor share of income is going down. And all along till 2023, we suspected that automation and AI will push the gains of the labor movement and transfer that to capital gains. Today, we have evidence, and the writing on the wall is clear. If we don't act now, this is going to compound it in the form of a downward trend. So what we are seeing today is not just inequalities. Friends, what we are seeing today is a normalization of systemic injustice. This is being normalized, and therefore, this is really pushing us back into an era of techno-feudalism. And my, passing reflection on what we can do in 30 seconds is one, we certainly do need trans-local solidarities, but that's not enough. We also need cross-movement conversations. For instance, feminists and labor movements have to talk to each other. What happens to a gig worker? What happens if a gig worker is a woman who has to bear the triple burden of everyday labor? We really need to come together in very creative and uncommon ways to build a new common sense, to recover the public, to recover ideas of sovereignty in people's struggles, including technological sovereignty, so that we can, through structural changes, here in the UN, ask for tax justice. Otherwise, how will we build digital infrastructures of the future in our countries? So I think in all of this, the project requires us to go back to asking for a binding treaty on corporations, because I can assure you that the world has not seen a creature like the tech corporation ever before. They will promise you the moon and certainly not deliver. So we really have our actions carved out. Let's embark. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's good that we have a multi-stakeholder engagement here. So hopefully by the time we conversation, we'll have some way forward. Now we are going to go through a storytelling process where we're going to have our colleagues tell us the story of inequality. That brings the real pictures into the room. We've heard the overall conversation, but what is really happening? What is happening on the ground? How are we experiencing inequality on the ground? The first person to speak with us is Androgynos, who is going to share the experience from the stakeholder and the LGBT space. So let's give it up for Androgynos. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think you all know what's happening in Global South, especially in Kenya. The Gen Z, like the protest, and also the high cases of femicide, which I, as a LGBTQ person, have been involved in Kenya, all the protest, and we are fighting the system because they are normalizing the inequalities in our country. And as a LGBT person, as you see, we are fighting the inequalities of the system. Now, you see, there's the discriminative laws in our country. Now, that's not a burden to the LGBTQ community, the high taxation, and also the discriminative laws, they are making us even not survive in the country, the economic injustice, because the LGBTQ community get more of the economic injustice, just how they identify. And also on the health sector, we can't even afford to go to the health sector because of who we identify as. And not forgetting about the cultural. These are the things which contribute to the inequalities in our countries and the LGBTQ community in Kenya. And this one makes it even hard for us to implement the SDG, where we are not even mentioned as the key population people, the LGBTQ community. So for me, I'm saying that we need to have the inclusion of policies that
this one.
Sorry about that. For me, I'm saying that we need to have inclusion policies for all the people in order for us even to implement the SDGs, mostly on the economic part, because we need it as at the goal 10 and also goal 18 on the work and economic growth of the LGBTQ community in Global South, in Ghana, Uganda, and Kenya. Another thing which I need to highlight is that as my organization, which we are doing like a vocational training center in Nairobi, and with this, we also like have a data of how the high cases of economic justice have affected our Kenyan youth. And another thing I need to highlight is also on the LGBT community find it very hard even to afford the basic needs like food, housing. That's why we have a lot of shelters in Kenya to offer for the young, mostly on the young sexual minorities in Kenya. They're getting evicted just so they identify. Also in the schools, you're also getting suspended when they think that you are part of the LGBTQI community. You can see in the on the tech, when in 2019, when everyone was faced to go back home and everyone was on their phone, we found there was high cases of people getting evicted because they could watch the videos on their TikTok and then say, oh, this person is LGBTQI, and now they get evicted. There's also people who are being discriminated on the workplaces, just the way they dress. You see the way I've dressed, there are some places where I can't get employed. They're like, oh, go back and come in a dress or come like dress decently, all that. And it's not just me, it's like a lot of queer people who experience the same thing. So for me, it's the policies and also the laws to be reformed so that everyone, even the LGBTQI community, can be included. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Salma?
Boa tarde. Boa tarde. Boa tarde. Isso. Primeiro, agradecer em nome da CONAC, que é a Coordenação Nacional de Quilombos, pelo convite. Eu sou do Brasil e sou quilombola. E respondendo a última pergunta, nós, negros e negras no Brasil, nós já fomos deixados há mais de 524 anos, quando os nossos ancestrais foram traficados de África e levados em condições desumanas para o Brasil. E dessas condições desumanas, esse grupo criou-se o seu modo de resistência. E aí surgem as comunidades quilombolas.
So good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a representative of the National Coordination Body for Black Rural Quilombola Communities. And 524 years ago, Black people in Brazil were left behind. When my ancestors were uprooted from Africa and trafficked to Brazil, they created quilombos as a space of resistance.
No Brasil, nós somos mais de 6.500 comunidades quilombolas, somos mais de 1,5 milhão de pessoas e estamos em 24 estados da federação. E a nossa luta é para garantir que os nossos territórios, que ancestralmente são nossos, continuem conosco. Esse é o nosso maior desafio, enfrentando o racismo no Brasil.
So there are more than 6,000 quilombos in Brazil, more than 1,500,000 people in the 24 states of Brazil. And our biggest challenge is to secure quilombola territories and to deal with racism.
Precisaríamos de mais tempo para falar do como o racismo no Brasil mata as pessoas, como o racismo no Brasil impede que nós continuamos em nossos territórios, como o racismo no Brasil, onde uma população de mais de 55% sofre na mão de uma minoria que garante não só a riqueza do país, mas como todas as coisas boas que produzimos.
So racism in Brazil kills. and prevents us from having possession of our territories that a minority of very, very rich people wants to have it from us.
Hoje, a CONAC, que é a Coordenação Nacional de Quilombos, na qual faço parte, junto com Versilene e Sandra Maria, nós fazemos a luta pela terra. E essa luta pela terra tem custado vidas. O Estado brasileiro nos mata, nos tira dos nossos territórios e nos deixam sem políticas públicas e sem terra.
So today, CONAC, my association, we are fighting for the land, and this struggle has cost lives. The government doesn't fight with us, but against us.
Achamos que com a eleição de Lula no Brasil, os problemas dos pobres, das pessoas negras no Brasil estariam resolvidas, mas não. Nós temos o pior Congresso do país. E é esse Congresso que comandam as leis, legislações e atrapalham os nossos planos de cada vez mais ficar com os nossos territórios.
So we thought that with the election of the current president, our issue would be resolved. But we have the worst Congress in the country, and they don't help us in our fight. They go against of everything we believe.
A nossa tarefa aqui é denunciar o racismo do Estado brasileiro, denunciar a não titulação dos territórios quilombolas, denunciar aos mais de 70 assassinatos de lideranças quilombolas que lutam pela terra no Brasil.
So one of our tasks here is to denounce racism, to denounce the non-titling of the land that the government is doing, and also the killing of many quilombola leaders.
Queremos nossas terras tituladas, queremos nossos territórios livres de todo o processo de destruição, de acabamentos das riquezas naturais, de desmatamentos, de queimadas e de toda a parte que o agronegócio promove em nossos territórios.
So we really want our land titled, free territories, that they stop the ones that are trying to steal the territory, and also they avoid the fights that are happening in Brazil. They are trying to finish with the biomes that we fight to protect.
Para encerrar, quero pedir aos irmãos e irmãs de África que somem conosco para a continuidade da denúncia de como é que são tratadas as comunidades quilombolas no Brasil. E as demais pessoas que se somem na luta antirracista. É preciso enfrentar o racismo de frente. É preciso destruir o racismo, ou nossas vidas vão continuar da mesma forma que estão. E, por fim, dizer que cada um e cada uma de vocês tem a tarefa de, após ouvir a nossa chamada, de após ouvir o nosso convite, que falem das comunidades quilombolas, onde é que vocês estejam, quais países que vocês estejam, onde vocês forem. Assuma esse compromisso com as comunidades quilombolas do Brasil de continuar pedindo para que o Estado brasileiro nos dê o que é nosso por direito. Titulação dos nossos territórios já.
So I want to ask our brothers and sisters in Africa to unite with us and denounce the way our communities are treated. We have to face racism head on, and our lives will remain the same. And we all have a task here to speak up for the Quilombola communities. Where you go, asking the Brazilian state to give us what we want, to secure our territory.
Thank you very much. Let's give it up for our colleague. Thank you so much, Selma. Yes, Munka. Yes.
Munk. So, hi everyone. My name is Munk. I am from Mongolia, and if you may not be familiar, Mongolia is a country sandwiched between Russia and China. So, And our capital city, Ulaanbaatar, is the coldest capital city in the world. So around half of the year is spent in minus 30 degrees. So, and our traditional way of living is through herding animals, livestock. And because of, this climate change and what the people didn't do in Mongolia, the climate change is affecting our communities, and people are forced to move to the city. And when they move to the city, to survive in minus 30 degrees, they burn raw coal, rubber tires, whatever they can find, trash even. And that creates the worst air pollution. And also these communities often lack social justice, economic, opportunities, healthcare services, educational services. So most people who live in these communities are victims of inequalities. And, you know, what I thought was, so basically when you look at the country, half of the people live in the city, in the capital city, and around 60% of those people live in those communities that we call Ger districts. Ger is the traditional Mongolian structure, which is like a tent. So all these people are being left behind, basically. And through my activism, we've done a lot of research, but mainly focusing on the young key populations at the risk of HIV and also general LGBTIQ plus communities in Mongolia. And what we've found was that our community, those two communities are being, their rights are being violated, especially in education and healthcare. And not limited to those two communities, we also have ethnic, linguistic, and religious minorities in Mongolia that are also often left behind. People with disabilities, their rights are completely forgotten when you look at for example, how our city is made, how the buildings are built. And the biggest group of people who are being left behind are the impoverished people. So all the opportunities are given to those who have connections, who have, more another different level of socioeconomic status. And as a young person, what I believe is that we can fight, we can just raise our voices and talk to the government. And most importantly, we should empower ourselves, equip ourselves with that skill, knowledge, and that courage to fight. Because when you look at the election results, for example, young people never vote in my country. It's the lowest rate of percentage. And the same type of political party keeps being elected, and all the policy just continues. So I want to offer this 4-letter solution to reach the SDGs more faster. So LEAD. So L is leadership, E is education, A is advocacy, and D is development, so that we can bring change and start from ourselves, especially as young people, so that we can take over in the future. And also, I came here to New York thanks to being a part of the Asia Pacific Regional Convening of Youth ahead of the Summit of the Future. So 82 young people gathered, and we put our recommendations to the heads of state in 5 areas. So if you want to find out about what the 60% of the world's youth want, you can look at arrow.org.my, and our call to action is there. And since we came to New York, we've been handing it out to some countries, delegates. So we really hope that our recommendations and local contexts are captured there, and it makes it to the reality. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. I mean, what happened in Kenya has taught us that we can't leave young people behind. I mean, the organizing of people using technology and what you just said around, you just created something for us, lead, which is a key thing that I have learned from you. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, just to throw it back to us, the audience, to have a say in what we are talking about now. I always look at the leaving no one behind part of the report, of the SDG report of countries. And you see how they put flowery language, about things they haven't done, but they put some nice language there just to cover up for what they need to put there. So we have Oxfam in the house, and Oxfam publishes an annual report on the state of global inequalities. They in this report, they show the issues of inequalities, how things are getting worse. And we are lucky to have a representative of Oxfam here to just share with us what is in the report and where are we going, and should we rethink our approach and addressing the inequalities crisis from the ground up. So my colleague from Oxfam would just take the floor for a few minutes. Let's give it up for them for the work that they do.
Thanks everyone. My name is Ed from Oxfam. I head up advocacy and campaigns around the world. I just want to pay huge tribute to all of these awesome panelists today. I just think they are incredible. Like, what an incredible group of people and what incredible stories you've all told. I think in terms of, as you said, Robert, in terms of Oxfam International's report, I mean, we have a lot of Oxfam, the Confederation of Oxfam's report. We have a lot of very big stats in there, yeah? I mean, at the last World Economic Forum, we said that the 5 richest men in the world made more since 2020 than 5 billion people in the rest of the world. So 2/3 of the rest of the world got poorer, while 5 men got richer. So, which is it's like astonishing. 5 men earned more than the 5 billion. At the same time, we also did come up with a stat about carbon emissions, and the richest 1% of the world's population have produced as much carbon pollution since 2019, again, as the 5 billion poorest people. So these people are making vast amounts of money, and in terms of leave no one behind, they are leaving 5 billion people behind. That is quite a lot of people. So I also want to recognize, though, that in that 5 billion, it's a massive sum, it's a huge group of people. But as we've been talking about LGBTQI people, youth, racialized communities, ethnic minorities as well, they're the most discriminated against are the people who get left behind the most. And I think this has been really well highlighted in this panel. Tomorrow you should look out also, because we are launching a new report about the oligarchy, the new era of global oligarchy, where clearly, as you know, private sector, elite government, military in a lot of places are controlling the wealth of the world. Now, we are talking about the future of multilateralism in that global era of oligarchy. So I encourage you to look at, I'm not going to give you the stats today, but you can look out for them tomorrow. In terms of what do we do about it, and I'll wind up with this. What do we do about it? I think the key thing is the people on the streets are the people who are going to make the difference. As we were talking about, in Kenya, it made a difference. In Bangladesh, it's made a difference. In communities in Latin America, in Bolivia, Peru, it's made a difference where we've seen it happen. People have got on the streets and fought back against the system. I think Peter's point also was really key. We need to remember what we're really fighting against is this global oligarchy that are controlling the neoliberal economy and forcing it down everyone else's necks. So this isn't a mistake. Like this is literally decisions that have been made on purpose to increase the wealth of the few at the expense of the many. I was quite inspired. On Friday, we joined the New York section of Fridays for the Future on their march through Brooklyn, asking the governor of New York to sign the Climate Payments Act to force corporations in New York to pay for their pollution crimes. I think the key thing that I took from that march was young people on the streets are the ones who can make the difference. And I was really inspired by their chanting, which I won't use the biggest swear words they used, but the ones that they did talk about. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. If we don't get it, shut it down. And to me, that is the action that we need to support communities like our representatives here on the streets all around the world, because I think without that people-powered movement, we are going to continue signing bland pacts for the future and continue to reinforce this inequality. So I just really encourage you all to, I just really inspired by all of you and really inspired by this whole event. And I encourage you all to get out on the streets, support your communities to get out of the streets and shut it down, shut this global oligarchy down.
Thank you very much, Ed. Yes. So we go to the floor. We are taking questions, recommendations, and then also if you have we, as we are talking, left anyone behind? Please bring it up so that we don't leave anyone behind. Yes. Thank you. We have the first hand.
Hello, I've spoken before. My name is Sylvia. As well as working with the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors, I work on aging. So you haven't got an elder person on that panel. And many older persons across the world are impacted by climate change and are left behind. And in this summit, it's been about youth focus, which is great, but who do youth live with? Who support youth? Who look after the grandchildren? Who make sure that the younger workers can go to work? It's the older people and the older women, often. And I really feel it's important that we have to bring the whole age aspect into these discussions. We have many activist older people around the world. In the UK, where I come from, on climate action, it's often the older people who glue themselves to the road and go to prison because they say, we're retired, we can do this, it doesn't matter if I have a if I have a prison record. And just to finish, there's a wonderful example of older women in Switzerland who have taken their country to court because of the impact on them as older people of climate change and heat. And I think in Germany, there's something called grannies for climate. Those of you who live in Germany. So please don't forget us, the older people. And I was hurt when Guterres said, it's all our fault. Hand it on to the younger generation. It's not fair. We were on the barricades. We had our white bands on. We did Jubilee debt. And it's really important not to forget the past and current presence of older activists. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Redeema Hegde. I'm the founder of a festival called Inspire Change. It's a conscious arts festival, and it's connected and hoping to connect to everyone here in all the efforts. The idea is that how do we unify all these movements? How do we start a self-sustainable foundation? And the idea of starting a foundation is what inspired the festival. And also, I went to the UN school, so I grew up with being aware of international causes. And a lot of the times, I feel like I go to protests and it's people will only be like, it's like, people protest for one cause and the other, UN International Peace Day. Everyone's just protesting separately. But the idea of the festival is how do we unify under the umbrella of the arts for social change, reminding people that we are art creative beings at heart. They don't have to be a professional artist, but arts are really important to represent voices of the people. They've always been a way to represent voices of the people. So an idea is like how to maybe unify under the umbrella of the arts. One idea is developing an agency that represents the people, the movements of the people, because we aren't being represented. All these grassroots movements that are doing the work don't have enough money a lot of the time. They don't get their voices heard in these global meetings. Yeah, and like all these monies goes to the bigger foundations, these big organizations, we don't see where it's going properly. Like with Haiti, your example, years ago, where there was billions of dollars and they built like 6 huts or something, and that was it. And then they didn't, they're still struggling. So I think that we really, hopefully we can all connect under, and I think just including the importance of the arts as a way to advocate transforming society is something that I would love to share with more people. Inspire change and UNMAP is the idea for the UN agency, because music and arts unite and unmap the world. So let's figure out coming together and developing an economy. I would love to hear thoughts about how maybe the arts can be a way to unify and develop economies, an economy independent of the governments, because all these governments are working for corporations at the end of the day. They're not working for the people. So figuring out maybe like different coalitions and developing under the umbrella of the arts economies that can be independent of all these governments.
Hi, thank you. I'm Rice, and I'm a youth representative. But my question is, I totally respect what the first person here said, that there needs to be an equal platform for everyone, like all generations. But my concern is, okay, so I really like to hear your thoughts on this. One of my colleagues was denied entry to the United Nations Summit of the Future. And trust me, she's more qualified than me to be there, only because she is under 18. And this leave no one behind. There are people, and I'm 18. I'm fortunate to be 18 because this makes me qualified. So I want to see organizations such as United Nations or like any other organizations here. What are they doing for people like us? I mean, we've been working for climate action, gender equality, and all such topics from tender ages, and we don't get representation to global forums like this. Like, opportunities are not made available to us, and seeing colleagues of mine not being able to make it to the same platforms only because we're under 18, I think that question really needs to be addressed, because I think when you're young, the energy inside you is just really powerful to make the change that you want there to be out in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jean Quinn from Unanima International. And thank you to Ed, which I really appreciated what you just said, and also Sylvie in relation to the elderly. When we're talking about inequalities and leaving no one behind, we had the PAC affirmed this morning that leaves out housing and homelessness. People who are homeless, or people who relate to homeless, say, well, they don't have a voice. They do have a voice. They expect us to listen. And it was very difficult to get us to listen today. So it was a good example of what happens for people who are out of home or homeless. Thank you.
Moi, c'est Madame Barry Aminata Touré. Je cap Mali. Donc, je dis que ça fait longtemps qu'on parle de lutte contre les inégalités. Ça fait longtemps qu'on parle de lutte contre la pauvreté. Ça fait longtemps qu'on parle de commerce équitable. Ça fait longtemps qu'on parle aussi de fiscalité juste. Mais aujourd'hui, où est-ce qu'on en est? Pourquoi les enfants sont de plus en plus des enfants soldats? Il faut qu'on s'interroge. C'est parce que les parents sont pauvres. C'est parce qu'eux-mêmes sont pauvres. Ils n'arrivent pas à avoir le minimum pour se nourrir. Ils n'arrivent pas à avoir le minimum pour être soignés. Le minimum pour aller à l'école. Donc, c'est des enfants qui sont jeunes ou grands, on les retrouve comme enfants soldats. La scène s'est passée au Mali il y a quelques jours. Ils ont interrogé certains enfants de 13 à 17 ans qui disent que oui, les terroristes les ont engagés pour avoir de l'argent pour leurs parents. Leurs parents sont pauvres. Moi, je pense que ça nous interpelle et nous devons interpeller les décideurs mondiaux. C'est important. Il faut que nous fassions tout pour qu'il n'y ait pas quelqu'un qui est à côté et qui n'a pas pu sauver sa famille et que les enfants meurent dans la rue. Il y a beaucoup d'enfants mendiants, beaucoup d'enfants soldats. C'est ce que je voulais ajouter. Merci. Donc, l'éducation, l'emploi, la santé, la nutrition, la lutte contre la faim, tout ça, c'est des choses qu'on doit mettre en avant, entre autres. Merci.
Merci, c'est toujours un grand plaisir de parler après la Madame Aminata Touré. Merci. I'm Johannes.
She was talking about soldier children and saying that we have to take into account and to acknowledge that the cause of children having to be soldiers is poverty and some other factors, but she was emphasizing so much poverty.
Yeah, my name is Johannes. I'm part of the executive of the NGO Committee on Social Development. And I want to invite you to if you kind of feel like action now, what to do next, how to tackle the inequalities in a very real way. So as we work towards the World Social Summit next year, we can make some significant demands. And I also ask for new global standards to actually be implemented to talk about homelessness, talk about protection of the elderly, LGBTI, and so on, and also social protection flaws. So tomorrow we will have a session at 1:30 to talk about what could be global demands that unifies us, that brings us together, and advocate for those. Because social protection flaws, as our colleague mentioned also, sounds nice, but it's not necessarily a progressive term. It could mean a very bare minimum protection for workers, mothers and children and so on. So we need to ensure that social protection flaws are not just flaws, but comprehensive universal measures of protection that include from pension to healthcare to education to the whole package, and not be pushed to the bare minimum of what's available. So tomorrow we have a session to kind of talk more about action, to form a coalition to prepare for the Qatar summit that's happening in November last year. And you're all very much welcome to join the working groups and the different discussions that are happening there. So thank you for all the speakers also, and yeah.
Yes, thank you. My name is Kapwani. Hello, everyone. My name is Kapwani Kavenuke from Tanzania, United Nations Youth Delegate under the African United Nations Youth Delegate Program. I'm really happy to be here to talk about inequalities and leaving no one behind. And I'd just like to talk about another group of people who are often left behind. And these are the persons who are homeless. We're talking about those who are on the streets. Yes, where some people call them vagrants, or those who are actually begging on the streets. So I have an organization known as Moja Farm Organization. And what we do is to try and find a way to help these people who are on the streets. So one thing we need to know is no one ever wakes up, no one would ever want to sit in the sun the whole day begging for food or asking for food. It means there must be something going on. And I feel like there needs to be done, there's much that needs to be done to try and research why are these people living in these situations, what can we do to help them. And often this group comes with a variety of ages. It has children, it has persons with disabilities, it has the elderly, it has a number of people involved in this. And how can we help them? What can we do? And it brings about many cases. You'll find that some of the women who are living on the streets are victims of gender-based violence or rape, and there's so many issues around that, but we don't usually talk about that. How can we talk about ending including reduction of poverty, when we're not looking at these people as well. So this is a group that we shouldn't leave behind. And as Moja Farm organization, what we try to do is, because we know some of them don't have education, so we equip them with green jobs, green skills. So trying to help them find ways and make ends meet in that way. So we can all benefit by trying to find a way to support this group of people. Thank you.
We have 2 more submissions, one on this side, and then the last one here, and then there's online too. So we'll take some 2 or 3 online, and then we'll move here. Are there hands raised online? 1, okay, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Annie Kurian from Terra Marine Research Institute, India, and I stand in unity with everyone who spoke about homelessness. I'm addressing yet another aspect of homelessness, of people who are native to the planet, who are custodians of the knowledge, the indigenous communities. We're wiping our very parents off the land. And here I stand to represent the traditional group of local fisher communities along the West Coast, the Himalayan communities in India in the north, and the Andaman Nicobar communities, which are a group of the communities that drifted, as part of the continental drift and moved part of India. So I have actually traveled along these paths for my PhD. I covered the 9 coastal states of India. And of course, the Himalayan groups recently came down to Bangalore and stayed a protest of how the corporations and illegal development is displacing them out of their land and livelihoods. So, but this is a global phenomenon. So in last UNEA 6, a few of us, a group of countries from Kenya, Togo, South America, sadly, one of the indigenous group representatives is not accredited for the Summit of the Future. I really thought he would. Hello, yeah. So we need to address this as a global action, not as scattered groups, because with every changing government, with every new law, people's rights are getting wiped out. So we can't afford to have that anymore. So we need one global action that has to be implemented, not even as an option, that has to be implemented, that environmental norms are not fluted, indigenous and traditional communities are not wiped out of their land. They hold solutions to address the climate crisis.
Thank you so much. Yes, we take our colleague there, and then we take the one online, and then we will sum up. I'll get our panelists to give us their closing. There's a couple more online, actually. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Linda Asaba from the UN Association of Uganda. We keep saying leave no one behind, but the actions are few. I just want to give an example of what is happening in East Africa. For young people, usually, yes, they're left behind. There's a program that is running in 6 countries, and that is the African United Nations Youth Delegate Program. This program is running in Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, South Sudan, and Sudan. And its aim is to equip these young people so that they are not behind, so that they have the skill to get onto the table. Other than just don't leave the youth behind, we equip them, capacitate them so that they actually are not left behind. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us. Yes, our colleagues online, can we take?
Okay. Yeah. Godwin?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, do you want to ask your
Hello.
question?
Okay, yes. My name is Lasisi Godwin. I am a Global Youth Ambassador for Their World, and I'm an SDG advocate and a young public health professional. My question is specifically towards the localization of, yes, we say leave no one behind, but I'm pretty particular about localization of global efforts to other words, assist low and middle income countries to see that the SDG Agenda 2030 is achieved in earnest, because based on reports, we are far falling behind. So what localization efforts are put in place, because countries, and I mean, we're not even talking on the continental level now, we're talking subcontinental in terms of countries and then their states. Each climate environments are particular to a particular country. So what's the localization initiatives put in place so rural communities and marginalized and vulnerable groups are able to access opportunities, be it in terms of funding or in terms of information on a global scale, so they can see to owning community initiatives that they can champion for themselves and see that then the achievement of the Agenda 2030 is feasible to them. I mean, talking in the local context. Thank you.
Very much. Yes. Then the last one, I see there's a final one.
Naveen, I'm just going to ask you to unmute.
Thank you. I'm Naveen. I'm from India. So I just wanted to know, how can we develop culturally sensitive
Can you speak a
climate
little
monitoring?
louder, or
Am I audible now?
not too
Hello?
good? Are you far from your mic?
No. I think there is some issue. Just give me a second. Just give me a second.
But are there any
Am I
questions?
audible now?
Yes, yeah, we'll try. We'll try hard.
I have actually posted in the chat if somebody can read it out.
Yeah, I can read it out.
Sure.
So how can we develop culturally sensitive climate monitoring and evaluation framework for communities discriminated on work and descent, and what role can youth and participatory research play?
Okay. Thank you very much, panelists. I hope you were taking the questions and the remarks. So this is going to be your answering of the questions, and then you give us your closing remark so that we can end on time. So can I have your mic? Yes. So who wants to start? Okay.
For me, I'll say we need to present evidence on how the current SDGs have been implemented and how to have left some certain groups like the LGBTQ community, the children, the elderly persons, and solution how we can integrate these communities in the global agenda. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I just want to point out that in all our struggles to challenge inequality, we must situate digitalization and ask ourselves how vulnerabilities and marginalizations are getting compounded. For instance, what happens when the welfare state becomes digitalized? What does it mean when my biometric doesn't give me my rations, my food rations, because the biometric doesn't match? So I'm excluded. What does it mean when companies that use in the chip industry go down the oceans to look for new minerals? They go up in space because it's not enough to exploit the planet. You need to go to other places. What does it mean for climate justice and livelihoods? We need to ask what's happening when all of work is getting gigified and informalized. And what does that mean for all the long fought struggles of the labor movement? And of course, the list can go on. So my appeal here is to really integrate into our agendas for justice the whole core agenda of digital justice. Thank you.
Just, I think to fight for any groups of people's rights, we need to enable them to have community-led interventions, community-led responses to all the issues that they're facing, so that we can have sustainability in terms of what that problem is on the agenda. Thank you.
Os quilombos do Brasil não podem continuar ficando para trás. Nós estamos ficando para trás há 524 anos. Então, a nossa tarefa é cobrar do Estado brasileiro, cobrar do atual governo, que as comunidades quilombolas não continuem ficando para trás.
So the Quilombos, we are still left behind. We have been left behind for, as I said, 524 years. So we all here have to have this dialogue with our governments so no one will be left behind. Thank you.
Please let's give it up to our panelists for the amazing stories they've shared. And thank you so much for your representation. We also have to close. We have a colleague of ours who has written a book, Faces of Inequality, and they want us to join them to launch this because this is a collection of stories of people who have been left behind and inequality has affected them in India. And so we call our colleague Pradeep to join us, and then the panelists will hold up the book and then we launch it and then we close. Yes, let's stand. Please, you can hold the book each and then we just take a picture and we close. Yes. Yes. Please, you can have one. So, everyone has one, yes. In the name of supporting our colleagues who have been left behind, they can't travel here. So their stories are gathered in this book for us to know. So we join our colleagues to say we officially launched the book, Faces of Inequality. Thank you. To end it up, I'll say that, colleague, let's not forget that if we leave anyone behind, we are leaving ourselves because sometimes we think something doesn't affect us. I would say that please check the leaving no one behind part of the report of your country every time they are submitting reports and see who they are saying they are leaving behind. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.